Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Joe, where I help you make better coffee and give you honest reviews. Today I have an honest review. It's going to be brutally honest because I had a lot of high hopes for this machine, but it really has missed the mark. So I'm going to go ahead and give you the pros, cons, make a couple of shots, and tell you some of the reasons why I'm not a big fan. I will say I got this machine for $200. And on the surface, it seemed really great. It was like, oh, it's got a PID, it's got a 58 millimeter portafilter basket, it's got a standard steam wand, a pretty nice grinder built in with 30 adjustments on it. So I was like, oh man, this might be something like the Breville Barista Pro, but for 200 bucks. But it was not. Before we get into the review though, why don't you go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps me out a ton. I'll see you in the pros. Okay, so first up on the pros is the steam wand. It is actually pretty nice. It feels sturdy. It is only a one-hole steam wand, so it's not like shooting out a ton of pressure or anything like that. But it does, feel nice. It looks nice, and the fact that it's on a ball joint is also pretty nice. And it is a traditional steam wand, so it's not like you're using a Panarello or something like that, which I'm not really a big fan of. So, it's a reasonably good steam wand. There is negatives about it, and I'll bring that up in the cons. Okay, so the grinder is one of the other pros, kind of, that I'd like to touch on, and it's basically just that the consistency of the grinds are actually very, very good. It's very consistent as far as the grinds themselves. If you take a look at the video I show here, you can really take a look and see that it's pretty consistent across the board. And then the next pro that I really want to touch on is the design of this drip tray. That is one of the nice things here, is that there's a little drawer in here where you can kind of swipe the grinds into, which is nice. And there's also a little drip tray notification, so once you have too much water in there or liquid or whatever, it will notify you to pull it out and drip it out. Okay, the other pro that I want to mention too is that it is a PID controlled machine, so you can actually adjust the temperature on here between, I think, like 4 degrees. There's a combination you could do, kind of like the Barista Express if you're familiar with that. There's a combination to increase and decrease by 2 degrees. So that's another nice thing. Last thing is the water tank. I actually think the water tank is pretty nice. It's easily, you can move it out and pour water right into it. And it's pretty large at 2.8 liters. Most, especially with this type of machine like the Barista Express, I believe is only 2 liters. So this is a nice big water tank that you don't have to keep constantly refilling. So that concludes all the pros. Let's get into the cons. Okay, so this is gonna be a mouthful. There's a lot of cons, and this is generally why I'm gonna not give this a high rating. First off, the grinder is consistent, but when you make these micro adjustments, which they just aren't, they aren't micro adjustments. If I make an adjustment here, I've noticed that I'm seeing a massive jump in how slow or fast my extraction is. I'm talking about like if I move this 1 over, it'll be way too fast, and then if I move 1, to the finer, once I get kind of close, it ends up choking the machine out where you're barely even getting drips. So it is pretty frustrating that they have all these settings here, but it doesn't seem to be all that useful. The other part of this grinding system that I don't like is I don't really like how you have to push this down to get grinds out. So you have to push down on this, and it's slow. This is the slowest grinder I've ever used. It is consistent. It gives consistent grinds, but it is so gosh dang slow that you won't even want your coffee after you're done waiting there to get enough espresso grounds in there to actually make an espresso. So that's the other kind of big piece that I don't like. And the other part while I'm pounding on this thing, it also doesn't have a timer. So if you are a beginner and maybe you don't want to buy a scale and do all the craziness that, the crazy people like me do, you have to kind of try to figure out how to get the right level out of this without having a scale, and there's no timer, so the timer would kind of fix that, so you can do this exact same amount every time, and if you need to maybe adjust your dose, you can do that with just a timer. And that's why the Barista Express, I think, actually is pretty suitable for people that are just starting out, because that timer makes it a little bit simpler. Okay, so the next thing on this that I don't like is the portafilter. There's not really one redeeming quality other than the fact that it's a 58 millimeter, but it kind of isn't. So on the surface, when I saw this, I said 58 millimeter portafilter, wonderful. Why don't most companies do this? Even Breville doesn't seem to be doing this on most of their machines until you get up to their super high-end stuff. So I thought, wow, this company's, kind of thinking about the espresso lover, but not really. So first off, this thing is like cheap feeling. It's very light. It doesn't retain almost any heat. This machine's been on for about a half hour, and I can, hold this, and it's, I would say, barely warm. This is probably sitting at like 78 degrees, 80 degrees, nothing crazy. And the other thing is that it is a 3-pronged portafilter. So you do need to go, you can't, buy an aftermarket portafilter basket, or portafilter rather, and, just throw it in the machine if you want something that is nicer and retains more heat. It just isn't going to happen, because this is just a weird, bizarre thing that they've done where they've made a proprietary portafilter at 58 millimeters. It's very strange to me. One of the other things about the portafilter I don't like is that these spouts are bizarre. I don't know why they picked the length they did, but when you make a shot of espresso, a lot of espresso cups aren't super wide, so you end up not getting your espresso in the cup. So again, man, did they screw up this portafilter. And not to mention the plastic insert. This, I'm not going to give it too much hate on, but because it is plastic, I will mention it. I don't like super hot espresso going directly onto plastic. I don't know, maybe it's just paranoia, but I just don't like that idea. And the other piece of that is, if you did want to take it out, like some of the other machines like the Barista Express, you can pull these out and still use it. This one has a screw holding it down, and if you do that, you're going to have liquid coming out of that screw hole. So you really can't fix that. And the last thing about this portafilter that I'll say is that, yes, it's 58 millimeters, and again, it's so proprietary that if you put an aftermarket portafilter basket in here, it actually doesn't fit and seat to the machine. Maybe some of them will. I have like 10 of those, so I've tried a bunch of different ones. I've only had success with about 1 or 2 of them, and it's really not even a full success. It just kind of works, and you can get away with it. So overall, I had a lot of high hopes for this portafilter, and it just did not meet the criteria that I was hoping for. The other thing about the cons I want to mention is the machine itself. It looks okay, but build quality is very lacking. You could tell that they took some, hints from the Barista Express. It looks very much like a Barista Express, but they didn't actually fully encase the sides or anything like that in stainless steel. They cut it off right here, and it's all like gray plastic. And really, most of the parts on this machine don't feel super nice. Like on a Barista Express, for example, when you grab the portafilter, there is a little bit of a heft to it, and it does feel a little bit nicer. And the other thing too I don't like about this machine is that there's a timer built in, and I've said this about other machines, but I don't like auto off timers. I want to be able to turn the machine off when I want and let the portafilter stay hot, even though this one doesn't get hot. So that's another thing. So I guess, I don't know, it's sort of an odd array of cons that I just don't like about this. There's just finicky things that I just frustrate me. So I'll end up getting rid of this machine, but I wanted to give it a review so people know, why I don't like it. Maybe you'll still want to buy it, but I generally would not recommend it. Just want to quickly touch on the accessories. This is a plastic portafilter tamper. It's garbage. I actually don't like you could go here or there, but the fact that it's up top getting hot is kind of weird to me, that this piece of plastic is just going to get hot and then you're going to put that on your coffee grounds. That's kind of odd to me. It does come with a pretty nice steam pitcher, a pitcher to steam your milk, and it's stainless and it's nice glossy finish. It matches the glossiness of your steam wand, so that is pretty nice. And you do get a couple of baskets. You get the baskets for pressurized espresso, and you get a non-pressurized. And honestly, for this machine, you would probably think that you'd want to use the non-pressurized, but it is, as I've tried, very hard to get good espresso out of this using the non-pressurized basket. There's just a lot of playing around with doses and all that stuff before you can really get to a place where you're happy with the way your espresso is coming out. So let's move on to making a few shots. All right, let's make a shot of espresso. I'll show you the workflow I use for making espresso on this. So first, you definitely want to use a scale because this is really hard to determine how much coffee is going in. So I just tarred that out, and I'm gonna grind about 15 grams into this portafilter. This is the one that comes with it. It's the non-pressurized portafilter basket. All right, 15.9. I'm gonna grab this spoon here. Thank you, camera wife. We are going to take out some, and I'll just throw it right in this little drawer. One of the nice features of this. All right, so I'm at 15.1 grams. I'm gonna give this a couple of taps, try to level it off a little bit. I'm gonna use my leveler and tamp it as well. All right, let's throw this in. I'm gonna do a manual shot, and there's no timer built into the machine, so I'll use the one built in. We're gonna hit manual and start. Maybe I'll tar this in. Okay. Little fast. We're at 20 seconds. And 30. So this is 30 seconds. This is not a great shot. You could go finer, and that might be better, but we are already at 2, so you only have, 2 more spots to go. So, it's hard to really get a good shot of espresso on this, like I was saying. You gotta really take your time. Probably if I ramped it up to like 16 grams, you might be able to get better, but it's really a lot of playing around before you really dial in a shot. And what I hate the most about that is you're wasting a lot of coffee before you get something that's, drinkable and good. So it's not great. It's not the worst thing I've ever drank. I mean, it just tastes like it almost tastes like an Americano. Very watery. Yeah, it's just not that great. I don't know what else to say. So let's move on. I'm giving it a very positive score here of a 3 out of 10. So, there's a lot of disliking things, a lot of cons on this machine, a lot of reasons why I'm giving it that score. It is the lowest score I've ever given to an espresso machine, and I think it's for good reason, and I hope you thought the same. If you did, give it a thumbs up, and maybe consider subscribing, as I'm a small creator and it helps me out a ton. So I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks again.